A mist clings stubbornly to the jagged tree-line, curling around each gnarled branch as if the forest itself is determined to swallow the hollow whole. Through this ghostly veil, the remains of a village emerge, skeletal timbers jutting from the earth, slick with dew and moss, their edges worn by decades of wind and rain. The air carries a chill that bites through the fabric of memory, carrying with it echoes of lives once brimming with laughter, now dissolved into the soil. Footsteps disturb a blanket of fallen leaves. Each crackling step seems to awaken the past, and for a fleeting heartbeat, the air carries the laughter of children long vanished, voices fragile as smoke. Near the heart of this ruin, a woman kneels beside a moss-clad well. Her fingers trace the initials carved into the stone decades ago, fingers trembling not with cold alone, but with the weight of remembrance. Her lips move in whispers to saints whose names have long since been claimed by the wind, the syllables twisting into nothing, like smoke dissipating into gray light. The stone is damp beneath her touch, cold as the lives that once circled this well. The fetching of water, the secret prayers murmured in silence, the shared tears of mothers and fathers alike. Each groove in the stone is a testament, a whisper of faith and persistence etched into the body of the world itself. Around her, the village sprawls in ruin. Roofs that once held families now sag under ivy's relentless grip. Doors hang on rusted hinges, swinging with a mournful creak in the breath of the wind. Crows wheel above, their cries slicing through the silence like knives, as though marking the passage of summers never counted, of harvests never gathered. They are the village's final heralds, threading through the hollow, their wings brushing against the ghosts of laughter and argument, of tender glances exchanged across the hearth, of promises made and broken under open skies. The village pond lies choked with reeds, water so still it mirrors the gray expanse above, hiding in its depths reflections of lives abruptly ended by famine, plague, or war. It is a surface smooth as glass, yet beneath, the stories of toil and love are submerged, buried by tragedy and time alike. Rusted plows lean against collapsed sheds, their blades dulled, once sharp instruments of survival, now quiet relics. A tattered cloak flutters in a restless wind, its threads caught in thorn and vine, the fabric whispering of a shoulder that once bore a child, of warmth exchanged in the hush of evening. Every artifact breathes its story if one listens. The rhythm of labor, the hush of hope, the quiet despair of loss. Twilight stretches over the hollow, gray fingers threading through the skeletal rooftops. Amid the decay, a single candle flickers within a hidden attic, its flame a fragile pulse against the deepening embrace of the forest. Light trembles along the timbers, casting shadows that dance across cobwebs and cracked plaster. It is a testament, small yet defiant, to the persistence of memory, of care, of human presence even in the most desolate of places. The candle's warmth reaches outward, a tender hand brushing against the darkness, reminding the observer that life, in some form, lingers still, fleeting, fragile, but undeniable. The forest presses close, its fingers brushing the remnants of hearths and doorframes, a tactile reminder of invisible hands that once coaxed warmth from fire and sustenance from the earth. The wind moves through the hollow like a slow sigh, carrying with it the scent of damp earth, rotting leaves, and the faint sweetness of moss. In this sacred decay, time does not pass in hours or days. It drifts, curling and twisting like smoke above the embers of what once was. Shadows fold over themselves, concealing the pulse of lives absorbed into roots and stone. And yet, within this quiet, the observer senses persistence. An unbroken line of existence echoing faintly in the hollows and cracks, waiting to be remembered. A crow lands on a shattered fence post, its claws gripping splintered wood. Its beady eye surveys the ruins with a cold indifference. Yet in its presence, The silence feels more complete, more deliberate, as if the forest itself has appointed this creature sentinel over memory. From the corner of the hollow, the distant sound of running water rises. A stream that once nourished the village now carries leaves and twigs, whispering over stones smoothened by time. The water's song is a lullaby to the past, a rhythm older than the plow, older than the stone. It speaks of endurance, of cycles that survive even when human hands no longer tend them. The woman at the well rises, her shadow stretching long and thin across the moss-strewn ground. She turns her gaze toward the skeletal cottages, toward the candlelight flickering in the attic above, and for a moment, the boundary between past and present blurs. She can almost hear the rustle of skirts on the cobblestones, the clatter of a pot lid in a kitchen that no longer exists, the whispered secrets shared beneath the eaves. Her lips part, yet no prayer escapes, for she understands that some words are carried not by sound but by presence, by touch, by the quiet act of remembering. In the village's decay, there is both mourning and reverence. Each broken roof, each rotted timber, each stone pressed into the earth with care tells the story of lives that refuse to vanish entirely. The forest may grow, ivy may crawl, and seasons may erode the outlines of what was, but memory is a fire not so easily extinguished. It flickers, it dances, it refuses to be claimed fully by silence. And as night descends, cloaking the hollow in velvet shadow, the candle's flame persists. A solitary heart beating against oblivion, defiant in the dark, guiding those who come after to see not just ruins, but the pulse of what once mattered. A final hush settles over the hollow. The crows settle in the trees, their cries fading into the stillness. The wind dies to a whisper, brushing gently over stone and wood. And in that quiet, one realizes that the village endures, not in its walls, which crumble, nor in its ponds, which stagnate, but in the memory it imprints upon the living, in the tender act of remembrance, in the courage to speak the names of saints no longer sung. Time drifts like smoke here, but it does not consume. It carries, delicately, the lives folded into roots and stones, into the mist and into the mind, until the next chapter of story unfolds, waiting for hands brave enough to touch, to remember, to see. Dawn arrives with a thin veil of frost, crystallizing the remnants of clay rooftops into ghostly patterns. Light trembles across the village like a hesitant visitor, brushing the gables with cold fingers. The boy runs barefoot through bracken, his small feet pressing into the damp earth, leaving fleeting footprints that vanish beneath the weight of a fallen branch. He pauses, chest rising, ears straining. A shiver of wind moves through the hollow shells of houses, carrying whispers that seem almost human, a chorus of vanished voices. Once, this place rang with the clang of blacksmith hammers and the rhythmic pulse of looms, each strike and thread weaving life into the heart of the village. Now, silence reigns, save for the wind curling around broken walls and rusted gates. Every step stirs the scent of damp earth, rotting straw, and the faint sweetness of moss clinging to stones. A perfume that speaks of meals once shared, laughter echoed under timbered roofs, and the warmth of hands pressed together over bread. A shattered bowl, etched with faint symbols of saints, lies half-buried in the frost, its cracked edges catching the first pale sunlight. It whispers of blessings forgotten, of prayers offered at low tables, of devotion that lingered in the touch of fingertips long since gone. The boy touches the cold stone of a threshold, feeling the pulse of generations who once crossed it, tracing their lives in silent echoes beneath his palm. Each grain of the wall, each chip of plaster, is a memory pressed into the bones of this place. Shadows bend over walls and broken doors, casting shapes that mimic windows, hearths, and the living rooms that no longer echo with warmth. They fold into the frost and moss, folding the human past into the rhythm of nature, until all that remains is a fragile conversation between presence and absence. A hollow chapel leans at the edge of the village, as if praying for salvation. Its bell rope hangs frayed and silent, swinging faintly in the current of air, a ghost of ritual that once summoned voices in prayer and lament. The boy steps closer, brushing past the ivy that snakes over stone, feeling the chill of history. Inside, dust motes dance in the shafts of light that pierce broken windows, and the faint outline of carved saints peers back through centuries, eyes closed in quiet judgment or endless mercy. He imagines hands reaching for him, hands that folded cloth, rang bells, and traced crosses in the air. The weight of all those absent bodies presses gently against his spine, and he shivers at the intimacy of their unseen presence. Outside, a doe peers through the brambles, a living witness to human absence. Its breath rises in ephemeral clouds, catching the frost in a fleeting halo. The boy stops, meeting the creature's dark, unblinking eyes. In that gaze is a quiet understanding. The land remembers. The earth carries the echoes of all who walked upon it, and in return, it shapes itself around the void left behind. The doe turns, gliding silently into the undergrowth, leaving only the sound of twigs snapping and frost crunching beneath unseen hooves. The village exhales under the slow ascent of the sun, revealing a tapestry of moss and ivy, roots curling around foundations, creeping over doorways, threading through the broken tiles of rooftops. Nature reclaims each angle, each artifact, until forest and village are inseparable, entwined in a quiet metamorphosis. What was once loss is now transformation, and the boy feels the pulse of this truth in every footfall. The dreams of ancestors linger, entangled with ferns and roots, guiding him along a path drawn not in maps but in memory. He senses the cadence of their hopes, the ache of their labors, and the silent prayers they offered for harvests, health, and home. In the hush of the forest, every sound carries the heartbeat of those who linger beyond time. Acorns fall, their soft thuds echoing like distant drums. Ravens cry from unseen perches, their calls slicing through the morning air. A breeze stirs the broken lattice of the chapel, rattling loose stones like whispered warnings. The boy moves with careful reverence, stepping where the living once gathered, tracing the invisible geometry of their lives. Here, every shadow is a memory, every hollow is a vessel, and every breath is an invitation to witness what remains. He finds a hearth, cold and blackened, and kneels, brushing away moss and leaves. His fingers trace the scars of fire and soot, imagining the crackle of flames, the aroma of roasting bread, the warmth that once drew bodies close. The memories are not his own, yet they cling, stubborn as frost on stone. He stands, feeling the weight of 1,000 untold stories pressing softly against his chest. There is fear here, yes, in the void left by absence, but also a strange reverence, a recognition that life and memory are not entirely lost. They persist in the textures, the smells, the very bones of the earth. As the sun climbs higher, the boy follows a narrow path winding into the heart of the forest. Light filters through frost-tipped branches, scattering like fractured glass across the ground. Roots and vines twist and coil, and he navigates with a quiet certainty, guided by instinct and inheritance. Every fallen leaf, every crumbling wall, every echo of wind becomes a language, a map written in absence and presence at once. He senses the village around him not as it is, but as it was, and as it will continue to be, folded into the patient arms of the forest. At last, he pauses on a hill overlooking the village, the frost glinting across the rooftops, broken walls and ivy-clad stones. In the distance, the chapel leans, The dough has vanished, and the wind carries a chorus of unseen voices, some mourning, some blessing, all remembering. The boy breathes in the cold air, tasting the interwoven past and present, and for a moment, he feels the pulse of eternity beneath his feet. Here, decay is not finality. It is a transformation, a quiet insistence that the lives lived, the hands that worked and prayed, the hearts that loved and feared, continue in silence, in moss, in memory. He steps forward into the forest, leaving footprints that will soon vanish beneath the next fall of frost. Each step is an echo of those who came before him, each heartbeat a drumbeat of the vanished village, now reclaimed and immortalized in the quiet green of moss, ivy, and bramble. And as the forest swallows him, the boy becomes part of the story, guided by ancestors' dreams, threading his own small presence into the endless tapestry of remembrance and metamorphosis. Rain whispers against fractured stone, each drop carving a rhythm into the earth, turning mud into the rich, intoxicating scent of memory and decay. The path, once a simple artery of village life, now curls like a forgotten ribbon through a landscape swallowed by time. Ash-colored oaks loom above, their skeletal branches leaning close, as if leaning in to hear secrets the wind carries. Beneath their shadow, the remnants of the village school crouch, a huddle of rotted beams and blackened slates, whispering stories of chalk dust, prayers, and trembling hands. A woman kneels among the ruins, fingertips tracing letters etched into mossy plinths, the grooves worn but stubbornly present. They might be her father's hand, or another who lived and labored here, leaving marks against the relentless pull of oblivion. Each carved symbol feels like a heartbeat suspended in time, vibrating with the effort of teaching, of learning, of small lives stretched taut across years of ordinary struggle. Lanterns that once swung with golden warmth are gone. Shadows now cradle delicate spiderwebs, each filament trembling with the memory of the light that no longer arrives. The scent of wet timber rises like incense from collapsed walls, mingling with the damp earth and the faint, almost imperceptible smoke of hearths long extinguished. In a corner, a spindle lies abandoned, thread dangling like a fragment of patience, a testament to labor once dedicated, now surrendered to silence. Ivy and bramble stretch across walls, embracing the ruins with a slow, unyielding tenderness, as if the forest itself mourns and protects. Birdsong pierces the mist with a gentle insistence, small and delicate against the heavy weight of absence. Beyond the school, fragments of a marketplace linger. A toppled stall, a clay pot cracked and empty, the imprint of a cartwheel pressed into the mud. One can almost hear the clatter of coins, the laughter of children, the bartering voices of farmers and smiths, the soft quarrels of neighbors. And yet all these echoes fold back into themselves, leaving only questions hovering over sodden soil. Who walked these paths? Who leaned over these benches? Who prayed for a harvest that never came? A single candle stub remains in a shattered window pane, its flame trembling against the cold, flickering with an almost conscious defiance. It casts a small circle of light on broken timbers, illuminating the edge of a memory, a fragment of lives once vibrant, now surrendered to moss and shadow. It burns quietly, as if unwilling to surrender its witness, as though the souls of the village, invisible yet present, are threading themselves through the remnants of walls and floorboards. The wind rises, a spectral current that threads through hollow roofs and shattered doors. It carries the scent of rain, the taste of earth, and the whispered chorus of the village's invisible past. Roof beams groan in response, shutters rattle against their hinges, and the ivy sways, murmuring secrets to itself. Each movement is deliberate, almost tender, as if the forest is not consuming but embracing, drawing the village into its patient, green reclamation. There is a rhythm here, subtle and insistent, as if the land itself remembers the cadence of daily life. The opening of the schoolhouse door, the scratch of chalk on slate, the murmur of voices beneath the trees. Every stone, every tuft of moss, holds a fragment of that rhythm. The air is thick with the perfume of wet earth and old timber, yet beneath it lies something more elusive. The quiet persistence of memory, the unyielding presence of human life even in absence. In a shadowed alcove, the remnants of a bench bear deep grooves, worn by knees and elbows, by the weight of learning and of waiting. A mouse scurries along the cracks, unaware of the centuries it traverses in silence, while a raven arcs above, its wingtips slicing the drizzle-laden air. Each sound, each movement, is amplified in the stillness, echoing through the skeletal corridors of the village. Here, in the intersection of decay and persistence, the senses are both arrested and heightened. Rain hammers softly against broken roof tiles. The air tastes of iron and rain-soaked leaves, and every footstep on the mud carries the ghostly imprint of another. The woman rises, letting her hands fall from the mossy letters, feeling the pull of emptiness and continuity at once. She is both witness and intruder, a bearer of memory and a vessel for what has been surrendered to time. The forest presses ever closer, ivy tendrils climbing higher, branches reaching lower, as though the world itself is drawing the village into its embrace. The ruins breathe with the rhythm of rain and wind, a slow inhalation and exhalation that carries the scent of endurance, patience, and reclamation. In the distance, the market traces its invisible laughter across the mist, and for a moment, the village is not lost but hovering, suspended between being and memory, between abandonment and the slow, certain persistence of nature. The candle flickers once more, then settles, its glow diminished but steadfast. The wind sighs through the hollowed corridors, tugging at the last fragments of cloth and wood, carrying the song of a place swallowed not by fire or sword, but by patience, silence, and green reclamation. The ruins are alive, but in a quiet, spectral way. Not with the bustle of life, but with the indelible imprint of those who once called it home. And as the rain continues its endless percussion, as the ivy tightens its embrace, and as the candle resists the cold, there is a sense of anticipation, of the story yet to unfold. The village, though silent, has not surrendered its voice. Somewhere beyond the mist, beyond the crumbled stones and the rotted benches, the next chapter waits, threaded with memory, whispered by wind, and carried forward in the persistence of the land itself. The sun dips low, spilling molten gold across rooftops half swallowed by ivy, each tendril curling over timber like the hands of ghosts reluctant to let go. A cartwheel, cracked and mossed, leans against a ruined granary, silent and immovable, a testament to the rhythm of lives once tethered to soil, sweat, and harvest. Its spokes, splintered yet stubborn, whisper the memory of 1,000 rotations, the dull thrum of work that fed mouths now vanished. In the soft air, the children's toys emerge from the overgrowth, wooden soldiers fractured by time, a rag doll's threadbare limbs frozen in an eternal play. They mark absence, yet hint at stories abruptly halted, laughter cut off mid-song, footsteps swallowed by the encroaching earth. Smoke once spiraled from chimneys, curling in lazy, deliberate fingers to the heavens. Now, only mist threads through splintered beams, a gray sigh of memory and neglect. The smell of sourdough, the sharp tang of iron from the smithy, and the smoky hearth of family dinners lingers only in imagination, fading yet insistent, a phantom taste of lives once lived. Salt, shed in secret tears, remains on lips imagined, a quiet witness to loss, to hunger, to love abandoned mid-gesture. A hermit bird alights on a broken fence post, its wings brushing the air like a hesitant prayer, fragile yet resolute. It pauses, as if considering the weight of absence, then flits along the ruins, a lone heartbeat among the hollow walls. In the village square, a well waits in muted patience. Its stone rim is slick with moss, slick with rain and memory, reflecting sky and forest alike. Here, water mirrors not only the tangible world but the unseen. Echoes of laughter, whispered promises, the frantic scurrying of children chasing dreams that never ripened. Every shadowed doorway is a doorway to memory. Every collapsed roof, a bridge to ambition devoured by time and nature's patient hand. The wind carries faint whispers, the rustle of pages from a ruined book left to rot, ink faded to the color of ash. Yet the meaning endures, threading invisible through the present, a tether to thought, desire, and despair. One might bend close, listen with the ear of the heart, and catch the faint pulse of the past still vibrating beneath the stones. At the forest's edge, a bell hangs broken, its bronze body tarnished and pitted. This chime has long since been silenced, yet even in absence, it speaks. The heart remembers what ears cannot hear, the toll of loss, the cadence of rituals that once ordered lives. Trees lean inwards, their roots gnarled and gripping the earth like guardians unwilling to release the departed. Branches sway, brushing one another in whispers, carrying secrets older than any surviving structure. The forest itself seems alive, each shadow, each glimmer of light a watchful eye, witnessing the slow transformation of human endeavor into legend. Here, memory and nature intertwine, and the wind carries them both in silent procession. Step closer, and the textures of the village unfold. Timber is rough beneath fingers, slick with rain and moss, cracking under the slightest pressure. Stones wear the memory of soles that once pressed against them in haste, in play, in fear. The scent of damp earth rises in spirals, clinging to skin and hair, a living reminder of the village's surrender. Rusted tools, spades, and sickles lay scattered like forgotten relics of devotion, each marking a hand that shaped grain and life, each whispering of perseverance in the face of uncertain seasons. Shadows cling to corners, pooling in empty rooms where echoes of song and prayer linger, insistent in their absence, haunting in their refusal to vanish entirely. And yet there is still motion. A fox slips through the undergrowth, eyes glinting with cunning and curiosity, pausing to consider the stones and hollowed houses as if weighing the stories of those who vanished. Leaves shimmer in the last light, tremble with the memories they cradle. A crow arcs across the sky, cawing once, a solitary punctuation in the quiet that has settled like dust over everything. Even decay carries a rhythm, a slow, inexorable march, and in that march, there is a story, the unbroken line between effort and oblivion, between dream and ruin. Life, though altered, persists in fragile, surprising forms, in moss, in birdsong, in the faint ripple of water across the well. In the heart of the village, fragments of human ambition still linger. A splintered ladder leans against what remains of a loft, reaching skyward like a silent plea for connection, for transcendence. The ruins of a hearth lie scattered, blackened stones telling of fires once warm with family, with hope, with argument and reconciliation. A window frame, empty and jagged, captures the last glint of sunlight, a miniature cathedral of shadow and light, framing the present and the past in a single breath. And in these fragments, there is both sorrow and beauty, the fragile testament of lives that dared to reach, to shape, to love, only to be reclaimed by the relentless, patient earth. The village seems to breathe in rhythm with the forest now. Each gust of wind through broken walls, each sigh of leaves against stone, Each distant echo of an imagined footstep becomes a heartbeat, a pulse that knits the ruins together. Here, memory and nature converge, and one cannot distinguish where the human ends and the wild begins. The sound of absent voices seems tangible, as if the past itself has taken residence in the air, thick with the residue of hope, grief, and devotion. Even in silence, the place speaks, demanding to be remembered, refusing the comfort of oblivion. As dusk descends fully, shadows deepen, swallowing the finer details. The golden light fades to a muted silver, and the village becomes a silhouette against the vast, murmuring forest. The moss-draped roofs, the overturned cartwheel, the scattered toys, all become symbols, small obelisks of memory in a landscape reclaiming itself. A quiet settles over the place, profound and almost reverent, as if the very earth holds its breath, honoring the stories pressed into its bones. And yet, even in this stillness, there is motion, the faint glint of moonlight on a leaf, the scurry of a creature in the underbrush, the whisper of wind in the hollowed-out walls. The village sleeps in decay, but it is not dead. It persists as legend, as memory, as a bridge from what was to what might have been. And in that quiet, a question lingers, almost unspoken. Who will remember the work of hands, the laughter of children, the flicker of firelight against timber walls? Who will hear the silent bell toll in hearts attuned to absence? For every ruin is more than stone and timber. It is the witness of human striving, the echo of ambition, of love, of lives pressed into time and left for the forest to cradle. And as darkness deepens, the village dissolves slowly into legend, into the collective imagination of all who wander, who wonder, who listen for what the earth refuses to release. Night drapes the village in a cloak of velvet darkness, folding shadows into every fissure of broken walls and crooked timbers. The moon, pale and watchful, brushes over the jagged edges of roofs, ripped open to the sky, casting fractured beams of light across streets, once alive with chatter and commerce. In a forgotten bakery, the scent of stale flour lingers, stubborn and thick, clinging to aprons stiff with damp, as if the hands that wore them had never truly left. The counters are splintered, jars shattered, spilling seeds and grains now claimed by the creeping fingers of rats, whose tiny claws scrape across the floorboards in hurried rhythms, carrying with them the echo of a season's harvest long gone. A woman moves through the ruins, her steps careful, almost reverent, each footfall disturbing the dust of generations. Her fingers trail across the edge of a hearth where fires no longer lick the stone, no longer chase away the chill. Once, this hearth had been the heart of the village, its warmth rising like a protective pulse through the rooms above. Now only coldness remains, a hollow echo of laughter and chatter, a ghostly imprint of stories told over bowls of porridge and the clinking of spoons. Her breath curls in the air, a fragile mist swallowed by the night, a whisper against the vast silence that holds the village like a tomb. The forest leans close, its presence felt more than seen. Wind threads through shattered windows, carrying the damp musk of moss, the decayed sweetness of rotting wood, and the distant metallic tang of iron rusting quietly under soil and time. Somewhere, a branch sways, scraping against a wall with a sound like fingernails over stone. The village and the forest converse in whispers, a dialogue of reclamation. Where once human hands sculpted and tamed, green persistence now softens and erases. Grass sprouts from cracks in the cobblestone, tendrils of ivy curl over splintered doors, and moss eats at the remnants of walls as if to remind the world that nature, patient and unhurried, outlasts the most determined ambition. A church steeple lies toppled, hollowed, pointing like a crooked finger to a sky indifferent to the absence of human devotion. Its bells are gone, replaced by the cry of a distant owl, the scratch of feathers on stone. Candles, once flickering with prayer, burn no more, yet the scent of wax clings stubbornly to the cold stones. Here, faith itself feels abandoned, yet traces of it linger like smoke in a forgotten corner, a memory that refuses to dissipate. In the silence of the square, a rusted plow stands, its iron teeth dug into soil grown wild, a symbol of work halted, of futures paused mid-step, of hands that once coaxed life from the land now stilled. The sound of water dripping from a collapsed roof fills the air with its gentle rhythm, echoing like distant footsteps along empty corridors. Each drop strikes the remnants of stone and wood, a metronome marking time against a backdrop of absence. It evokes the laughter of children long vanished, the murmur of conversation, the sighs of laborers weary yet content at the day's end. These sounds, fragile and fleeting, hang in the air like threads, weaving together memory and present, past and the inevitable silence that follows. A crow alights on the remnants of a fence, tilting its head with inscrutable curiosity, inspecting the ghosts of its previous tenants as though judging the cost of time and human endeavor. The woman pauses, eyes tracing the outline of shattered windows, of doors hanging on broken hinges. Her hand brushes the cold stone of a wall, following the remnants of carvings, initials etched with love, prayers, or protest, the significance lost to memory but preserved in the scarred surface. She feels the pulse of the village beneath her fingertips, a heartbeat long slowed but never fully stilled. There is sorrow here, yes, but also resilience. The quiet, patient insistence of life that creeps over stone and soil alike, reminding the living that nothing truly vanishes. The forest presses closer, branches sighing, leaves trembling with secrets it has held for decades. In this meeting of decay and persistence, of human ambition and natural reclamation, the village speaks of endurance, of what remains unseen yet profoundly felt. Through the hollow streets, the scent of moss and old wax mingles with the chill of night, a perfume of memory that clings to every shattered roof and fallen beam. Shadows gather in the corners where doors once opened, where children once ran barefoot, where tradesmen called greetings across the square. The absence is loud, almost tangible, pressing against the ribs like the weight of a remembered grief. Yet, amid the silence, there is the subtle rhythm of life, the rustle of fur, the shift of leaves, the drip of water echoing against stone. It is a persistence that does not shout but endures, quietly, inexorably, reclaiming all that human hands had claimed, softening ambition into memory, ambition into legend. And in that quiet persistence, a question lingers like the final ember of a fire long extinguished. What endures when the work, the devotion, the laughter, all fade into shadow? Perhaps it is the memory, the trace of effort, the echo of voices long silenced. Perhaps it is the green resilience of moss and root, the patient reclaiming of what was built with care and labor. Night drapes heavier over the village, pressing the forest and human ruins together, blurring edges and histories into a seamless whole. In the hush, the woman turns from the hearth, the plow, the fallen steeple, and walks toward the whispering trees. Somewhere beyond, the faint glow of dawn awaits, a promise yet unspoken, as if time itself pauses to honor what has been lost and what endures unseen. Morning light filters through towering oaks, scattering across the ruins in fractured beams. Dust motes dance lazily in the air, suspended like tiny spirits over collapsed cottages whose roofs sag into the earth as if in exhaustion. The smell of damp clay rises from shattered foundations, and the faint, lingering tang of smoke drifts from a hearth long abandoned. A hammer's echo, once the heartbeat of the village forge, hangs silently in the damp air, a ghost of rhythm and labor now stilled. A young girl kneels among broken tiles, her fingers brushing against a fragment of ceramic painted with saints' faces. The colors are faded, their outlines blurred by centuries of rain and neglect, yet stubbornly present, stubborn as memory itself. Her eyes trace the curves of the painted halos, and for a fleeting moment, the saints seem to regard her quietly, as though guarding some secret that time cannot erase. She lifts the fragment, fingertips trembling with reverence, and the wind, gentle but insistent, lifts stray leaves, scattering them across the courtyard like whispered prayers. The fox moves silently among the shadows, a copper specter weaving between toppled beams and splintered carts. Its eyes glimmer with a knowing patience, the lone witness to a life that once thrummed here. A life of laughter, of quarrels, of fires lit in hearths at dawn and dusk. Broken carts lie half-buried beneath moss, their wheels frozen mid-turn, suggesting journeys begun and abandoned, promises left unfulfilled. The smell of wet wood clings to the air, pungent and rich, a reminder of what the village had been. A network of labor, devotion, and stubborn hope pressed into mud and stone. In the ruined church, the wind finds the frayed edges of a tapestry and lifts it in a slow, deliberate dance. The threads sigh and tremble, recalling hands that once stitched with devotion, prayers that once fell like rain upon the altar, and the hush of congregation settling into quiet reverence. The air is thick with memory. The silence itself is almost tactile, pressing against her skin, cold yet alive. She steps carefully over fallen beams, her boots muffled by the damp earth, and for a moment, she imagines the choir singing, voices rising in candlelight, filling the nave with warmth and sound. Each stone, each weathered beam, hums with traces of life. The walls still bear the weight of hands that pressed against them in fear, in hope, in longing. A hearth blackened by smoke still holds the memory of bread baked and shared, of faces lit by firelight, eyes soft with trust or hard with worry. The forest's fingers creep over the rooftops, roots cradling and consuming alike, reminding her of impermanence and persistence, of life pressing on where it was least expected. Moss curls around stones, slow green flames that claim what humans once held dear. Yet in claiming, they preserve. The village is not lost, only transformed. She rises, brushing leaves from her cloak, and for a heartbeat, the village lives again. She imagines the market, carts wheeling across dirt paths, children darting between stalls, the scent of baked bread mingling with fresh herbs. A blacksmith's hammer falls with rhythmic precision, sparks scattering into the dusk, and the laughter of women carrying water fills the air. The fox freezes as if recognizing the memory, then disappears behind a wall of ivy, leaving only a rustle and a shadow. The girl walks toward the remnants of the village well. The stone is slick with moss and moisture, the bucket chained to its crank, long and used. She kneels beside it, hands tracing the grooves worn smooth by countless fingers, and imagines the villagers bending to draw water, voices mingling with the drip of condensation, with the creak of wood and the groan of the earth. The well is a hollow heart, yet it still beats with echoes. The water within, dark and still, mirrors the sky, reflecting a fragmented sun, clouds drifting like memories of a summer long past. Through the gaps in broken roofs, birds trace silver arcs, and the girl listens. Each note is a stitch in the tapestry of absence, a signal that life, even tenuous, threads its way through ruin. A crow lands on a broken fence post, ruffling its feathers, casting an eye that seems too knowing, too patient. She wonders if the crow, too, remembers the lives that passed here, whether memory is unique to humans or if the earth itself keeps the record. Time flows differently here, she realizes, not in the linear tick of hours or days, but in layers. The footprints pressed into mud generations ago, the shadow of a hand against a wall now long gone, the echo of voices that never fully faded. Each step she takes sends small clouds of dust rising, tiny specters that swirl and settle, visible only to those who pause, who truly see. In the village square, she halts. Once, children ran between carts stacked with hay. Now, weeds bend and sway as if keeping a quiet rhythm of play. A fallen door leans against a shattered wall, painted once with the name of its owner, the letters chipped and almost illegible. She presses her palm to the wood, imagining the warmth of human hands that once clung to it. And then she hears it, the faint creak of timber under wind, the sigh of the earth settling, a chorus of absence made audible. A soft breeze carries a scent of smoke, faint but unmistakable, drawing her to the remains of a hearth in the largest of the cottages. Charred logs lie in patterns that suggest a fire once tended carefully, rituals of daily life enacted with diligence and care. She kneels and imagines the family who gathered here. The mother, worn by labor. The father, calloused hands raised in blessing. The children, laughing, squabbling, falling asleep to stories spoken by candlelight. Every gesture, has left a mark, a resonance that refuses to vanish entirely. Her gaze drifts upward to the skeletal remains of rooftops, where sunlight and shadow play in constant dance. The forest leans closer, its roots clutching at stones, its branches scratching against timbers. It is not an enemy, she realizes, but a patient witness, a guardian and a reclaiming force all at once. In the clash of ruin and growth, there is poetry, a balance of loss and persistence that humbles her. For a fleeting moment, she closes her eyes. She can hear the village breathing again. The hammer of the forge, the low murmur of prayers, the scrape of carts on cobbled lanes. The fox pauses, ears twitching, before disappearing entirely. The girl feels the weight of absence, the ache of generations past, and yet, beneath it all, a quiet hope, a conviction that memory and nature together hold this place in a fragile equilibrium. When she opens her eyes, the village is only half present, half vanished. Dust swirls in shafts of light, carrying with it the scent of wet clay, smoke, and leaves. She steps forward, boots sinking slightly into softened earth, and the wind lifts a loose tile, which tumbles slowly across the ground like a fallen note in a long-forgotten song. She pauses at the edge of the forest, watching as roots curl over walls, branches stretching to the sky. It is a place of endings, yet also beginnings. Life folding into life, memory into myth. She takes a breath, tasting the chill in the air, the faint tang of smoke and damp wood, and senses the pulse of the village beneath her feet, faint but persistent. It is a heartbeat that time cannot quite still, a whisper of what was, and perhaps, what might still be remembered. And as the sun climbs higher, casting long shadows that mingle with the forest's fingers, she steps forward, leaving behind the echoes of her own footprints. The village, half swallowed by time and trees, watches silently, waiting for the next witness to stir its memory once more. Alive in echoes of wind and light, a place never fully lost but quietly transformed.